What if everything you thought you knew was a performance? The world sees a duchess, a woman who scaled the brutal heights of Hollywood and then conquered the even more treacherous terrain of the British monarchy. But look through the eyes of investigative journalists like Tom Bower or sharp critics like Piers, and a far more unsettling image emerges. A carefully constructed brand. An identity built on secrets stretching back further than anyone dared to look. Today, we're tearing open the files most journalists were too frightened to touch, 15 chilling moments where the mask didn't just slip. It shattered. Her legal team would love nothing more than for you to stop watching right now. But if you're after the truth buried beneath the headlines, you cannot look away, especially Secret 15, the one revelation that rewrites the entire royal narrative as we know it. Long before the tiaras, the global fame, and even before Suits, Meghan Markle was just another struggling actress in Los Angeles, hungry for her break. And apparently, hungry enough to do something most professionals would never dare. In 2004, she walked into an audition for Century City, until the casting directors asked the one question every serious actor must answer honestly. Are you a SAG union member? The golden ticket of Hollywood. Without that card, you simply shouldn't be in the room. Meghan looked them dead in the eye and said yes. She wasn't a member. She had fabricated her credentials entirely to secure the role. She got the job, and because of how the industry operates, the production company was legally forced to fast-track her membership afterward. She lied, got caught, and the system rewarded her anyway. Piers has argued for years that this moment is the blueprint, proof of a pattern where whatever means necessary were used to get into the room, truth be damned. If the very foundation of her career was built on deception, it forces an uncomfortable question. What else was simply a means to an end? But the union card was far from the only thing she reinvented. Her legal birth name is not Meghan. It's Rachel. Rachel Meghan Markle. Plenty of actors use stage names, but this cuts deeper. Her school friends called her Rachel. Her early credits listed her as Rachel. Even her most iconic character on Suits was named Rachel. She was living two lives at once. Tom Bower's research points to this as a cold, calculated branding decision. Rachel felt ordinary. Rachel felt suburban. Meghan felt like someone the world would watch. She didn't just reshape her personality for the cameras, she erased her identity entirely. Because Rachel Markle could never become a duchess. But Meghan could. Yet reinventing her name was only the opening act. To make the duchess narrative truly sell, she needed to rewrite her entire childhood, and that meant erasing the man who made everything possible. The story she offered the world was irresistible. A brave, mixed-race girl from humble beginnings, raised by a devoted single mother, clawing her way through a brutal industry on raw talent alone. A classic underdog story. Except the facts tell a devastatingly different one. Thomas Markle was not an absent figure. He was her primary caregiver from the age of 9, a highly respected lighting director whose credits included General Hospital. Meghan didn't fight her way into the industry from the outside. She grew up inside it, on those very sets, surrounded by top directors and producers every single day for a decade. Thomas funded her private education at Immaculate Heart, paid for her acting lessons, and used his own connections to land her that very first on-screen appearance. Court documents have since revealed letters between them, proof of a closeness she has never once publicly acknowledged. The moment Thomas became a PR liability ahead of the royal wedding, she cut him off overnight. The man who built her career was erased because he no longer fit the duchess aesthetic. And what came next would stun even her most loyal supporters. Once is an accident, twice is a coincidence. But 7 times? That's a strategy. Piers once declared on air that Meghan Markle has never had an original thought in her life. Harsh words that ignited immediate backlash, yet the evidence he laid out was nearly impossible to dismiss. In 2015, she stood before the United Nations and delivered what appeared to be a moving speech on gender equality. Widely praised, until people noticed it was nearly word-for-word lifted from a 1951 address by Eleanor Roosevelt. She swapped one word, peace became equality, and took the applause. And that was far from the only time. Her Archetypes podcast title bore a striking resemblance to an existing book by Caroline Myss. Her Netflix project Pearl was accused of mirroring works by a British author. Even her children's book, The Bench, raised immediate questions about originality. From her cooking show concept to the very aesthetic of her blog The Tig, a persistent trail of borrowed ideas follows her everywhere. Not stealing exactly. Curating other people's brilliance and presenting it, flawlessly, as her own. She wasn't just borrowing words, though. She was scouting for a very specific kind of life, and she knew precisely where to find it. During that famous engagement interview, Meghan looked the world in the eye and described their meeting as a blind date, claiming her only question was, is he nice? A beautifully romantic story. Except the paper trail tells a very different one. There are photographs of a teenage Meghan beaming outside Buckingham Palace. School friends described her as consumed by British culture, and the royal family specifically. One friend recalled a biography of Princess Diana kept permanently by her bedside. By the time she met Harry, she was already deeply embedded in the Soho House social scene, the exact same circles Harry and his closest friends moved through. Tom Bower's research suggests she was actively seeking a high-profile connection in England from 2013 onward, precisely as her first marriage was collapsing. She didn't stumble into a prince. She studied him, targeted his circles, and positioned herself with surgical precision. Piers has called it the greatest long game in modern history. She landed the prince. But the people who actually worked for her inside the palace got something else entirely. Meghan's public persona is built entirely on warmth, speeches about empathy, kindness, lighting the way. Yet behind closed doors, a very different title surfaced. The Hollywood Reporter famously dubbed her a dictator in high heels. By 2025, reports emerged that former Archewell staffers were seeking therapy simply to recover from the experience of working under her. This wasn't one disgruntled ex-employee. Over a dozen senior staff members had walked out since 2020. One particularly chilling account came from a British Airways crew member who described watching Meghan's entire demeanor transform the instant Harry left earshot. The compassionate Duchess evaporated, replaced by someone cold, exacting, and unrecognizable. Most unsettling of all, the crew member noted a striking absence of visible warmth between Meghan and baby Archie throughout the flight. A jarring contrast to the devoted mother the cameras always captured. But the mask didn't just slip in private. It shattered on the world's biggest stage. 17 million people watched the Oprah interview as Meghan tearfully described a secret garden wedding 3 days before the official ceremony, painting the royal family as distant and cruel. Except it wasn't true. The Archbishop of Canterbury himself stepped forward to confirm no legal ceremony ever took place in that garden. It was a private conversation, dramatically repackaged for maximum television impact. Then came the claim that Archie had been denied a royal title because of his race. In reality, century-old rules dating to 1917 govern exactly which grandchildren receive titles, rules that applied to Archie no differently than anyone else. Meghan was fully aware of those rules. She chose a darker implication anyway. This was the moment Piers famously walked off the set of Good Morning Britain, refusing to accept the narrative being sold. He was eviscerated in the press for it. Yet as the facts slowly surfaced, his skepticism began to look far less like cruelty and far more like clarity. And what happened to her digital footprint during this period is even more telling. In 2017, The Tig, her lifestyle blog, home to hundreds of posts, recipes, and unfiltered personal opinions, vanished overnight. It had been a genuine window into who she was before the crown entered the picture. When web archives recovered fragments of the deleted content, they revealed exactly what one might expect: a woman deeply fascinated by the royal family and ruthlessly calculated about her own ascent. The recovered posts painted a Meghan far more openly ambitious than her carefully curated royal image could ever afford to show. Deleting the blog wasn't housekeeping. It was arson, burning the bridge so no one could trace the steps she took to cross it. And while she was quietly erasing her past online, she was making very public moves that left the palace deeply alarmed. One of them was a $500,000 baby shower in the heart of New York City. The palace reportedly urged her strongly against it. No senior royal had ever staged anything remotely like it. It was a celebrity move, not a royal one. One look at the guest list made the real agenda impossible to ignore. Almost every person in that room had something to sell. Serena was promoting her fashion line. Misha Nonu was relaunching her brand. Other guests had television projects running simultaneously. Piers called it exactly what it was: a coordinated marketing festival dressed up as a celebration of new life. A PR spectacle, using the royal brand as its most powerful hook. Tom Bower's research suggests this was the precise moment the palace accepted a devastating truth. She was never going to play by the institution's rules. She was constructing a rival court, and she was weaponizing the most intimate moments of her life to do it. But she wasn't only using her connections. She was exploiting her own carefully crafted history. The struggling actress narrative sat at the very heart of her brand. Yet the facts dismantle it completely. She didn't come from nothing. She came from everything Hollywood could offer. Her father wasn't merely a lighting director, he was an Emmy-winning professional who ensured his daughter lacked for nothing. Elite schools, professional sets, industry access before she could even drive. The struggle was never real. It was a narrative choice, engineered to make her rise seem miraculous and her relatability feel earned. The same pattern repeats itself endlessly. Facts are quietly reshaped to serve the story. Childhood, career, relationships, nothing is ever left unmanaged. Every detail is polished to project a woman who defied the odds, even when those odds were never stacked against her to begin with. And speaking of relationships, there is one man her team has worked tirelessly to keep buried. Before the prince, there was the chef. Corey Vitiello was a high-profile celebrity chef in Toronto, and their relationship was serious. Almost 2 years, living together, by all accounts building toward something permanent. It ended in May 2016. Her so-called blind date with Harry happened just weeks later. The timeline is uncomfortably tight, and Piers, among many others, has openly questioned exactly when her attention shifted. Sources from the Toronto social scene have suggested Corey was blindsided entirely. He has not spoken a single word to the press in over a decade, and that silence, in itself, speaks volumes. He was the life she had quietly assembled in Canada while reportedly engineering her entry into the British elite. The moment a bigger opportunity appeared, that life was discarded without so much as a backward glance.
Discarding people is one thing.
Discarding the work you were paid millions to deliver is another. The $18 million Spotify deal was supposed to be the crown jewel of their post-royal reinvention. Instead, after just one season, Spotify pulled the plug entirely. A senior executive at the company went as far as calling them grifters on his own podcast. The reason? Reports emerged that Meghan wasn't even doing the work. 4 academic and expert guests, staff members conducted the actual interviews. Her voice was then edited and spliced in afterward to create the illusion of genuine intellectual conversation. She showed up for the big-name celebrities, the ones who could elevate her brand. Everyone else was handled by someone else entirely. It was a masterclass in collecting a paycheck for work you never performed, and it revealed a breathtaking contempt for the creative process. But if that feels scandalous, there is a piece of footage she would give almost anything to erase forever. In 2008, long before the palace, long before the title, Meghan appeared in the pilot of the 90,210 reboot. A tiny, uncredited role.
The script listed her simply as hot girl.
The scene was explicit enough that its resurfacing triggered significant embarrassment within royal circles, exposing a version of Meghan that existed light years from the refined, dignified image she had spent years meticulously constructing. The contrast between that footage and the woman who now delivers speeches on the sanctity of womanhood is nothing short of jarring.
She has never acknowledged it, never addressed it,
buried it beneath an avalanche of carefully managed PR. Yet it endures, a permanent reminder that the Duchess is a character she stepped into, not a woman she has always been.
It is, at its core, a performance.
And that brings us to the biggest secret of all, the one people are still whispering about today.
We have to talk about the pregnancy.
No topic has ignited more fierce debate, and even Piers, a man rarely known for restraint, has approached this one with unusual caution. To be absolutely clear, what follows are the documented observations of others, not definitive claims. But the questions surrounding Archer's birth remain among the most polarizing and unresolved mysteries in modern royal history. It began with what critics called the bump. Women who had lived through pregnancies themselves started flagging inconsistencies, the size, the shape, the way it seemed to shift dramatically between public appearances. Photographs emerged of Meghan squatting and bending with a physical ease that left countless mothers genuinely bewildered.
Then came the birth itself.
Every royal arrival for centuries has followed an ironclad protocol, a named medical team, a confirmed hospital, official documentation signed by doctors. With Archie, every single one of those conventions was abandoned.
No doctors named. No signatures provided. The announcement broke every established rule in the book.
The secrecy extended so far beyond privacy that it began to feel like a deliberate sidestep of the verification process entirely. Even Tom Bower acknowledged these unexplained gaps in his research. Whether the whispers of a surrogate hold any truth, the undeniable fact remains. No royal birth in living memory has attracted this level of scrutiny. The world has been asking questions for years. The only response from the Sussex camp has been silence. If you've stayed with us this far, the pattern is impossible to unsee. From that very first lie about a union card to the ghost-written podcast interviews, the erased blog, the rewritten childhood, and the father left behind, the story of Meghan Markle is, above all else, a story of curation. A woman who grasped early and completely the raw power of controlling a narrative, and who has never once hesitated to reshape reality to serve it. Whether you see her as a casualty of a cold and merciless institution, or as the most calculated branding operation of the modern era, one truth stands untouched: we are only ever seeing exactly what she wants us to see.
But the receipts keep surfacing.
The journalists keep digging. And the house of cards is beginning to tremble. If you want to be first when the next revelation breaks, hit subscribe right now, because what's coming next makes everything you just watched look like a warm-up.
2 videos are waiting on your screen. Pick one. Let's keep going.